welcome. My name is Ned Burwell. I'm here today interviewing Brittany Raycraft.
Hello.
I'm the creator of You Matter, and I'm also your host for this afternoon. Brittany is here to share a story, her personal story about hope, healing, and inspiration. So tell us a little bit about your childhood and things that you went through.
Well, when I was really young, I was in a Roman Catholic school, and I was bullied a lot because I had a lot of signs of like certain disorders and things like that. So I was like ridiculed a lot and bullied and beaten up. And probably until like the time I was 4 till about like 10 or so, and I found that was like a really hard thing to go through in that sense, only because like when I was going to school, it was like a place that was supposed to be really safe, and it wasn't for me, and I didn't have any like support in that sense, and that family life was kind of, I had a mixed family, and my father left my mom and I when I was really young, like I was a year old, and that was really hard on me. I have borderline personality disorder, so one of the symptoms is imagined abandonment or exaggerated abandonment, and because that...
So if that actually happened, that would intensify that whole thing.
Yes. So I actually did feel very abandoned. I had almost, you could say, like an abandonment anxiety. Even growing up, like I always got really anxious when people would leave a room or they would say goodbye or anything like that, only because it actually did happen. So it sort of intensified my disorder in that sense. But yes, definitely growing up and going through both of those very intense things were hard for me. I was very suicidal, like from the time I was really young, probably 5 or 6. Like I have diary entries of me talking about not wanting to be here, not wanting to be a human being, things like that, and wanting to leave. Probably didn't know what I was really talking about, but
what was going through your mind at that time, like when you're 5 and 6 years old, that was making you feel that way?
It was more or less because of all of the alienation. I just felt like I was very worthless, and I was very unwanted and abandoned and things like that. I would go to school and everyone would be, picking on me and thinking I'm weird, and I never fit in anywhere. So I just felt like, on a whole sense, like I just did not belong here. And I had a very deep sense of like worthlessness, and that I should just, I'd be better off just to leave.
And at what age did you find out, what was actually happening, like what disorder you had? And
when I was 15, I had my first suicide attempt, and they never really diagnosed me, but that was sort of the beginning. I was cutting myself a lot leading up to that point, and then I had taken a lot of different medications, and thankfully lived through that experience. When I was 24, I had a bit of I would say a midlife crisis, and the one night I was on the phone with a boyfriend, and there was like a bad scenario that happened, and it made me feel very embarrassed, and I don't know if it was just a trigger or something, but I kind of just blacked out after that. I don't remember anything, but when I went home, on my way home, I like picked up all these sleeping pills, and I did all of them while I was driving, and I pulled into the parking lot at my house, and I called my boyfriend, and I said, I'll always love you, and then the phone died, and again, I don't remember any of this. It was almost like my brain went on autopilot and just like shut off or something. So when I remember is waking up in the ICU. I was 24 years old, and I was really embarrassed because I hadn't shown any signs. I was doing really well, and all of a sudden it was like I was back in the same sort of like dark place that I hadn't been in a long time, and it was scary. I didn't know who I was anymore. It was very embarrassing, surprised in every way.
So you, as a young girl, you had these suicidal tendencies, and then you got better, or you were able to abandon those mindsets, and then it came back to you in your 20s, and then
Yes.
that's when you almost died, and you had that revelation.
Yes, and that's when I was diagnosed with borderline. They actually diagnosed me with bipolar type 2 first, and they put me on lithium, and it was not good. I did not have a good experience with the medication, and so I had a follow-up with the psychologist, and I kind of said, like, these are the things I'm experiencing, and he read out all of the symptoms, and there's 9 symptoms for borderline personality. You only need 5, I think, out of the 9, and I had all of them. So it was almost a relief to know finally what it was, and it was sort of like this answer and clarity that I was like, okay, this is what I have, and now I can do the real, like, deep work. Because before I'd been, going to counseling, going to therapy most of that time, but I never really had like real concrete answers. So it was just a really good experience being able to know what it was finally, and to understand it in every way I could. And that's kind of where everything really started in that sense.
So that the diagnosis helped you see your situation a little clearer, and so it's very important sometimes to get help and to figure out, why do I feel the way I do? Maybe we have similarities between other people, or maybe there's a logical explanation if we're not feeling okay.
Yes.
I think that's an important part of what you're saying there.
Yeah.
So, and then after you got the diagnosis and you understood what you're dealing with, how did your life change from that point?
Well, I think I was just so almost afraid of myself in that sense, for the darker areas I can get to in my mind, that I tried so hard and so much to understand it so that I could make sure that never happened again, or happened less.
And so what types of things did you have to change about your daily routine and to abandon these mindsets?
Well, I think that when you have a disorder, or like you have these sort of experiences as well, I think it's human, to feel all of these things. Just to honor the fact that I have all of these different emotions, and I just need to understand them enough so that they don't get too out of hand, I guess you could say. But there's this sort of give and take of surrendering to your emotions, but in a healthy way, because I think that's one of the biggest things that maybe like I specifically got wrong, was that I was starting to become afraid of my negative emotions. But they're also very important, because, and I think a lot of people become very afraid of their negative emotions, but there are so many safe and healthy ways to experience your negative emotions so that you can release them, because there's reasons why we are human beings and we can experience sadness and anger and joy and happiness and everything like that. So that was something that became a part of my daily life, I guess you could say, was being close enough to letting it be expressed, or releasing it, but within a boundary.
So you found a new relationship with the emotions in you and with the thoughts that would create these emotional experiences.
Yes.
And I think that's so key in maintaining good mental health is finding balance in their emotions, to not, when we get dragged in, really not to go too deep into them. And at some point, if we know that we're in over our heads, just to stand back and say, okay, just take a breath, and it's sometimes it's that simple. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, what would you say if someone was deep in their emotions? How do you get out of that?
To maybe step back and understand, like, okay, what are you repressing here? Why is there such a deep sort of like cup that's so full and it's overflowing of these things? And you know, you kind of just have to take it one step at a time, dissect one problem at a time. Again, like, that's easier said than done sometimes, but it's, even though it's scary, like, it is important to maybe even just understand that, like, I am in this very deep hole, and I need to take the responsibility for myself to get out of it. And for me, I think that was the biggest thing, was finally owning up to the fact that this is something that I have, and I need to take responsibility for my emotions and my brain and my life if I'm going to live on as happy and as healthy as I can. And I think that's such a crucial step in mental health. Health is taking responsibility for yourself.
That's such great, clean, simple advice. I love that point, and I think it's a meaningful thing that you've shared here, because there's mindsets that empower, there's mindsets that disempower, and that's a very empowering mindset. It's sort of reining things back in,
Yes.
and taking your power. So what are other things that you've learned that has in your healing path to empower yourself?
Well, I found that creating was a big empowering experience for me. I've always been artistic. I've always wrote like poetry, and I've just always been very expressive in every creative way, whether it was music or singing or dancing or art. And I found that, and I mean, I got lucky in that sense, that was just such a deep therapy and passion for me that I had to hold on to it, and I had to just keep doing it no matter what. And for me, that was such a therapy to not only express my inner emotions, and like, some of those emotions are very ugly, those experiences are very traumatizing and disgusting in some senses, but I was able to take them and put that energy into something, whether it was a song or a piece of art or a piece of writing, and make them beautiful. But then also in a safe way, it was a good therapy to also connect with other people and allow them to feel those things, to share those things, so other people can feel that they're not alone, because that was a huge thing that got me through a lot of these experiences growing up. Like, when I listened to the music, that I was not alone anymore. You know, there was someone in the world that understood me, and that also, you know, the same sort of things happened to them, or like something happened to them to express that, and just that connection. Even though I have never met, you know, John Resnick, the singer and songwriter, I feel like I felt so connected, and I felt less alone. And then that was sort of like a love that just kept growing for me, was that I wanted other people to feel this. I needed to express everything, and that, I guess that was the empowering part, was that you need to, in every way, make all of the bad good somehow, or beautiful somehow. So even though my mom or some of my family didn't like some of my art because it's really, really dark and scary, some people found it beautiful, because it just touched them. And that's always just such a fulfilling part of doing what I do.
So your empowerment has encompassed, turning inward, learning to and expressing that, and you have expressed it to others to find common ground, realizing that you're not alone. We're all going through this thing called life.
Yes.
We all have our bumps and scrapes, and sometimes they match
Yes.
quite perfectly.
Yes.
And in spite of all that, because you've become empowered, you're in a good space in your life. What do you do for a living?
I'm a tattoo artist.
I knew that.
Yeah. and a bit of a spiritual healer and other senses too. But yes, I own and operate my own tattoo studio, and I have been doing that for a long time now. And I mean, I won't sit here and say it was easy. It was very, very hard. It's hard for anyone, let alone someone who has mental disorders. And I mean, is every day a great day? No. I will wake up some days and it's hard to get out of bed, but you just take the good days when they come, and you get through the bad days when they're there. And it's not something that I will fixate on anymore. I let them come through me like a wave. And I think that's really important for a lot of people who are going through day to day. Life is, not every day is a beautiful healing day. We're meant to go through, everything. And I think the more that you just surrender to each day as it comes to you, the easier it does get, and the easier the recovery, the better the healing, or the less the healing, and things like that. So yes, tattooing is so fulfilling in so many ways, but I have my days like everyone else.
That's
For
right.
sure.
And your response is just, it's honest and it's genuine. And I think that's sort of a recipe for a richer or fuller life, is just being authentic and
Yes.
honest and real with wherever you're at.
Yes.
Sometimes life is terrible.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth of it. But in spite of that, we're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of an ongoing message that runs through my mind. No matter what pops up in my life, I'm going to be okay.
Yes.
And in spite of having a difficult childhood with legitimate problems, you're doing great in life.
Well, and I think that's all you can do in a lot of ways. Is we always have a choice. There's a friend of mine that has a saying that we have a choice every day to live in fear, or come from a place of fear, or come from a place of love. And I try very much to find the love in everything. I mean, it's like a pattern sometimes. I think in our society and the way that everything has been organized and designed, that fear is such an easy thing to come from, because we're just so conditioned in that sense. But also in the disorderly sense, it's easier to go that way, but you have to find a place to come from with love as much as you can. For sure.
And that's certainly, my motto is just be love.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any parting words you'd like to share with people? Any messages of inspiration or hope for people that want to be you?
I think that it's really important to find something that just makes you feel complete in so many ways. I mean, I think a lot of us want to find that in a relationship, or in our friends, or things like that, and that's really important. But for me, I was always in such a search for a love with someone else. But once I really embraced my love for something that I have personally, and I just held on to it and I never let it go. And I fought so much for it. I found that that's such a rewarding thing. Is whatever you really want to do in life, like whether you have a disorder or not, just never give up on it. Just keep holding on to it and be relentless.
What a wonderful message. Thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you for having me, Ned.
Yeah.